While on vacation in a city 8 hours away from home with my girlfriend, we get into a small argument, and this resulted in me leaving her stranded in a downtown area in the middle of the night. I walked back to the hotel 20 minutes nearby to cool off, thinking my girlfriend would eventually make her way back soon after. However, after 2 hours, my girlfriend was escorted back by police. Turned out, her phone was on low battery, leading her to not be able to look up directions on the way back or call for an Uber. She ended up getting lost for an hour and had to later borrow a stranger's phone to call the cops for help. I felt pretty horrible leaving her there. However, given that my girlfriend is already a full functioning adult, I didn't consider the possibility of her phone being dead. She does have a bad habit of forgetting to charge her phone. I threw her a Metro card and stormed away. She ended up overreacting to the whole situation, claiming that I abused her, packing her belongings, and calling her sister on the phone to tell her about what I did. Her sister ended up blowing up my phone, calling me cruel and abusive. Mind you, I only left thinking that she'd be able to get home easily. Even though it was a couple hours past midnight, the city was still crowded with people, probably not dangerous like she exaggerated. When my girlfriend was still crying to her sister, she lied and said that she's now feared for her life, possibly implying that I threatened her. In the heat of the moment, I snatched the phone out of her hands to talk to her sister myself. She suddenly screamed to the top of her lungs, another overreaction, took her belongings, and ran out of the hotel. I chased her down, but she told me that she had already booked a flight home in the early morning and never wanted to see me again. She kept saying that I hit her when all I did was try to explain myself. Her evidence being the very tiny nail mark I left on her face when she was trying to resist, snatching her phone back and didn't let me talk to her sister. 2 hours later, a police officer knocked on my hotel room as I realized that my girlfriend had gone to the police station and reported me for domestic violence. I gave my statement and they advised me to stop contacting her for the night. I didn't want this incident to ruin my hard-earned vacation, so I decided to stay for the rest of the trip like I had initially planned. After I got back, I tried calling her sister and her mom, and they refused to hear my explanation. Her mom even told me that they're still being interviewed by the police to follow up on the domestic violence report. I heard her sister telling me over the phone that I will pay my price. What could that be? My parents are undocumented. Now I'm paranoid that her family, knowing this information, would call the anonymous tip line on my parents. Am I the asshole for getting into a small argument with my girlfriend and then leaving her stranded? Story time about when I lost my virginity to a water slide. So, do you guys know those water slides that you stand in and then they suddenly drop you straight down onto the water slide? If not, look them up on YouTube. There's nothing like them. Ah, yes, the sweet memories of my first time on one of these. I feel that my mental and emotional scars have healed enough to tell this gem. At the time, my girlfriend, now fiance, worked as a photographer for one of those resorts with the indoor and outdoor water parks. One of her perks was that her and a family member or friend could get into the water park for free. So one hot summer day she had off, we both decided it'd be fun to go there and cool down for the day. While we were there, I discovered one of their most thrilling looking water slides. Basically, you stand in this tube and then the slide operator presses a button and the slide drops you straight down like 90 feet before you actually start going down the water slide. Me, being a thrill seeker, of course, had to try it. So I made a great climb up to the top of the slide, stood in line, and finally it was my turn. Once I got in the tube, the operator told me to keep my legs crossed. Now I'm a pretty big, heavy guy, so I was like, that's uncomfortable as fuck. I'm not doing that. So there I was, standing in the tube, having a panic attack from anticipation, with my legs not crossed. The operator finally presses the button and the bottom opens and I fall straight down the water slide. Very quickly I realized why they have you cross your legs. Water shot so far up my ass, so fast, I swear I tasted it in my mouth. My body raced down that slide as I questioned every life choice I had ever made. Once I made it down to the bottom, I sat there for a moment, absolutely violated. I felt like someone in an old episode of Law & Order, Special Victims Unit. I built up the courage to finally stand up, and all I could feel was a nice warm stream of water mixed with shit, and maybe a little bit of blood shoot out of my ass faster than a steamboat geyser at Yellowstone National Park. I quickly got off the slide and ran to the bathroom with a trail of shitty water tailing me as the slide operator stared in awe. They had to shut down the slide for the rest of the day, but man was my asshole clean after that. Hey y'all, look what I got from Ulta's Black Friday sale. I want to do that whole blowout look that they do in the salon, but I never knew how to do it, and I don't know the old school way of just using a blow dryer and a brush. So let's try it out. Bruh, this thing is huge. I did not expect it to be this big. It's hilarious because it says it's 30% smaller than the previous one. So this is what it looks like. This thing was kind of fancy, I'm not gonna lie. So it has a few settings. I'm just gonna put it on the highest. My hair is semi-damp, so I'm going to go ahead and put some of this heat protectant in it. I'm going to section my hair off and start with the bottom. I'm a little nervous, and this isn't a tutorial. This is more of a watch me fail or succeed kind of thing. This looks really good. I'm just going to say don't touch this part because it burns like a mofo. I accidentally touched it a few times. Okay, I'm really liking these two strands, and I like the little bit of curl at the bottom. I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest. Ooh, I'm liking how it looks so far. It has like a little bit of volume. Okay, so it's looking pretty good actually. I'm excited to see what else is gonna happen. For these back top parts, I'm gonna blow dry them up and out because I wanna see if I can get that blowout kind of look.
This is kind of what it ended up like. I don't really straighten my bangs, so I'm just gonna leave them how they are. And then I'm gonna put some root plump in it just because I do like a lot of volume in the roots. I kind of like it. I like how it's like has volume but is straight. I definitely need to practice a little bit more with it, but I think it looks good and it was really easy to use, so I highly recommend it.
Part 2 of when I stuffed my face with edibles before dinner with my wife's parents. At this point, my wife's mom looks over at me with some concern. "Are you alright?" she asks kindly. "Yeah, the food's just a bit spicy," I reply, far too quick to realize that we had literally just ordered and there was nothing on the table except for a basket of dinner rolls. My wife kicks me under the table to grab my attention. "Bathroom, now," she hisses. "Get it together." I reluctantly get up from the table and head for the toilet. After splashing several handfuls of water on my face, I approach a urinal and start to pee. Now, one of the more disconcerting effects of those tiny ginger snap monsters is feeling that time has become untethered from reality. As I'm peeing, I start to get the very unsettling feeling that I have been taking a piss for the better part of an hour and that my wife must be pacing around the restaurant worried about me. But deep down, I know that this is absurd. I've been peeing all my life, sometimes multiple times a day. I've probably taken more than 50,000 leaks and it usually only takes about a minute at most. So given that my typical pee is no more than 60 seconds, and given that it feels like I'm about halfway done, that means I've probably only been standing here about 30 seconds, right? But the guy at the urinal next to me doesn't respond and instead starts shuffling away from me midstream, like a startled penguin. I try, albeit unsuccessfully, to break the eye contact. After finally finishing, I again splash some water on my face before returning to my seat, making sure to apologize to the table for being gone such a long time, just in case my math was off. Next, I try to briefly engage in small talk with my wife's father, but I am far too high to understand what either of us is saying. Not wanting to start laughing uncontrollably at the wrong moment, or really at any moment, I figure the safest idea is to nod my head periodically and drink a ton of water. Nothing cures mental fatigue like water, right? To my wife's horror, I stand up, grab my water glass, and thrust it out to the waiter, who unfortunately is on the opposite side of the restaurant. But he turns out to be really cool and, after making his way over to our table, tells me he'll do his best to keep me stocked with ice water for the rest of the meal. He also helpfully suggests that if the dinner rolls aren't too spicy for me, I should probably eat one or two so that I'm not sitting there on an empty stomach. Smart man. However, after going through all the bread on the table and 3 glasses of water, I start to get worried that I need actual food to offset the growing paranoia from these tiny ginger snap devils. "Do you think I should flag down the waiter again and ask what's taking so long?" I suggest helpfully to my wife. "What? We literally just ordered 3 fucking minutes ago." And at that exchange, my wife loses her cool. "How many cookies did you eat?" she demands. "Whoa, easy there, Torquemada," I respond, somewhat horrified at her outburst. "I had a few cookies, but keep it down. I don't want your parents to know how fucked up I am right now." "Really? They're sitting 2 feet away from you. They know." I look up, and for the first time I notice both of my in-laws just staring at me for what felt like an eternity. At that point, my wife's singular focus was on getting me out of the restaurant. So after a few spastic, 2-handed waves goodbye to my in-laws, she rushed me to the door like a Secret Service agent evacuating the president. My night after that was a whirlwind of barfing and groveling, mixed with a few vain attempts at getting handsy back in the hotel room. But being the absolute awesome sweetie that she is, my wife stuck with me through the whole nightmare, whispering over and over again in my ear, "Please don't die. We have a mortgage." Imagine falling victim to a demented serial killer and being the only one of his victims that survives to tell the tale. In September of 1992, Jennifer Aspenson was a young 19-year-old nurse living in Palm Springs, California. She had just missed her bus while buying candy for the disabled girls that she worked with at a nearby hospital. During this time, a serial killer who had brutally murdered 5 women was on the hunt. Jennifer was visibly distressed because it was 9:50 p.m. and she worked a 10 to 6 shift. A man pulled up to her after noticing her distress and offered her a ride. At first, Jennifer turned him down, but she had already showed up late to work 3 nights in a row and she was told if it happened again that she'd be fired. As he started to drive away, Jennifer changed her mind and got in his car. When he dropped her off, he asked her for her number. She didn't want to blatantly reject him, so she gave him a fake number and went to work. When Jennifer gets off at 6 a.m., she sees his car waiting for her. He asked her if she'd like to get breakfast and she tells him that she couldn't. He then talks her into at least giving her a ride home and she accepts. As they're driving, he pulls out the number she had given him and his whole persona shifts. He screams at her that he called the number and some old lady answered. He instantly bashes her head in the dashboard and ties her wrists behind her back. Jennifer is in complete shock and terrified when she sees the gun. He puts her seat all the way back and drives her out to the desolate desert. As Jennifer watches the telephone poles pass, the realization sets in that she might never leave this desert. When he stops, he uses a weapon to tear off her clothing. Jennifer recalls the look in his eyes being dark and of pure rage. At this moment, she knows that he's done this before. He tried to assault her, but he couldn't perform, which only angered him more. The level of violence escalated as he strangled her. As her vision went blurry, she felt an overwhelming calm sensation wash over her as everything went white. Suddenly, she felt herself come to again and watched as he was pounding on her chest. She was ready to accept death and just told him to do it. However, he wasn't finished with her, and wanting to continue her torture, he grabs a bag of sharp weapons out of the trunk. She refuses to die being cut up into pieces and tries to escape. He follows after her and catches her, dragging her by her hair through cacti and gravel. He put her in the trunk, battered and bloody, and starts driving. In that moment, Jennifer remembered her grandmother and prayed to God for help. She recalls getting a hysterical amount of energy and splitting the twine apart that was holding her wrists together. She then manages, by some miracle, to tear through the latch of the trunk and open it. This is when the man pulls over, gets out, and slams the trunk shut again. Crime Fanatic Friday, Part 2, The Girl Who Survived a Serial Killer. Jennifer Aspenson had just managed to break free from her restraints and pop the trunk of her abductor's car. He gets out and slams it shut again. He gets in his car to drive off when his tire gets stuck in the soft sand on the shoulder of the desert. Jennifer manages to pop open the trunk once again and listens to the voice screaming in her head telling her to run for her life. The man grabs a machete and starts chasing after her. As she's sprinting along the deserted highway, by some miracle, a truck is driving towards her. The truck stops and it turns out to be 2 Marines. They quickly put her in the backseat and try to go after the captor, but she urges them not to as he has a gun. The Marines clothe her as she tells them what happened. She had been tortured for nearly 2 hours in that desert. The Marines take her to a patrol station in the nearest town 20 minutes away. However, her nightmare was far from over because no one believed Jennifer's story, including her mother or police. She was forced into thinking that she had some crazy episode and moved on with her life believing that she'd never see him again. Approximately 4 years later in 1996, Chicago was plagued by 3 consecutive murders that all shared the same MO. Hands tied, naked, discarded in water, and shot by the same weapon. However, police had no leads. It wasn't until a sex worker gave a tip about a John who had requested to restrain her. She remembered hearing about the other victims and reported it to police. This John turned out to be a man named Andrew Urialis, 32 and an ex-Marine. He had recently been arrested for possession of a firearm that turned out to be the exact one used in the Chicago murders. Urialis confessed to everything, including his murders in California, also outlining the details of Jennifer's kidnapping. They interviewed her and she pointed his picture out as the man who assaulted her 5 years prior. Urialis had murdered 8 women and Aspenson was the only one who survived. She attended every trial and testified against Urialis. He was found guilty of his crimes and put on death row. In 2018, he was sentenced to death in California. Less than a month later, he carried out his own sentence and killed himself in his cell. Jennifer went on to become a proud mother, public figure, author, and wife. She released her book, The Girl in the Treehouse, about her ordeal in 2018. She also starred in an episode of I Survived a Serial Killer, which is available on Hulu. My husband is a transgender man and we've always wanted to start a family together. I have a huge fear of pregnancy, so he offered to carry the baby. It was an insane process. He had to stop taking testosterone for a long time, but he was amazing throughout the whole process, and I did everything in my power to help him feel more comfortable. None of my family know that he's transgender. They're homophobic, transphobic, all the phobics, but our friends know. He posted an ultrasound on his private Instagram, not knowing that my sister follows him on a burner account. Well, she saw the photo and told my whole family. They were furious that I wouldn't tell them. Our plan was always to say that we adopted. They assumed I was the one pregnant and blew up on me, so I just let it go and rolled with the lie because I wasn't going to out my husband. The first couple of months, I let them visit. Eventually, I'd start eating big meals and purposely bloating myself to the point of discomfort so I looked pregnant. They said around the 6-month mark that I was remarkably small, but I just played it off. Eventually, I couldn't lie any longer, so I looked for every excuse in the book not to see my family. I turned down the offers of baby showers, gender reveal parties, and anything that would require us seeing each other. Luckily, my family lives an hour away and we all live busy lifestyles, so them randomly visiting wasn't an issue. The one time they did pop in unexpectedly, we were out of the house. If they FaceTimed, I made a point to be in bed feeling horribly sick so I couldn't give the bump update. I lied my ass off and they just thought that I had a rough pregnancy. My husband gave birth a year ago and went straight back on testosterone, and now we're happy as ever. My family have met our daughter and they adore her. However, a week ago, after an argument between myself and a friend, said friend decided to out my husband by messaging my family and included proof. They did it by adding everybody to a group chat, posting screenshots and basically the whole story, then saying, "I'll leave you all to discuss." Then they left the chat and blocked me and my husband. In a transphobic rage, my mother raced to my home and all but beat my front door down. I had to call the cops. I've been disowned, but that hasn't stopped the daily calls and texts coming from my parents, aunts, uncles, siblings, and etc. They've been leaving nasty transphobic slurs on my voicemail and other hateful crap. I ended up crying to my friend yesterday who told me that I should have been honest with my family as it would have saved me a lot of heartache. That, or we said we miscarried, then adopted later. I'm not happy things played out the way they did. I just feel so sad now. Was I wrong to lie to my family in order to protect my husband? Part 2 of the best thing I saw while working in a restaurant. This guy handed me his card as well and said, "Yeah, I'm gonna split that tab, so really guys, go wild, you're American heroes." They both empathetically told him no, they're not heroes, but this guy cut him off saying, "Oh please, I get overwhelmed playing Call of Duty. You're heroes and I'm glad to thank you for it." So they started ordering and the girl knew just what she wanted. Hank asked how much our steak and rice platter special would cost. Older bow tie dude called him not to tell him the prices and get him whatever he wants. He came up and said, "Son, no one can put a price on your sacrifice." Call of Duty guy splitting the tab chimed in, "The meat that we're giving you is a lot less valuable than the meat you gave up for us." His friend elbowed him to shut up, horrified, but it got a belly laugh out of Hank. Throughout this, no one noticed not only had Hank lost his hand, but also his leg. His pants covered and he's got too much honor to bring it up. By now, the kitchen got a whiff of what was happening and loaded them up real good. This lady was so moved that she paid for Old Man Bow Tie and Call of Duty's meals. It was a domino effect. The owner was so disturbed that 2 veterans had struggled to pay for their meals. He instituted a military gets the special free day of the week even though we've been hemorrhaging money since the pandemic closures and keeping the doors open on a week-to-week basis. Hank told all of his veteran friends and they've been coming in with their families. It's been great for business. This is why you should be careful who you befriend. When I was in junior high, I was a friendly and curious person. 1 month into the fall semester, we got a new transfer student. He was seated behind me and his name was Joe. I introduced myself to him, trying to ease the tension. I showed him what we learned so far and helped him to look over his class schedule. We had 2 classes and lunch together. Naturally, we got to know each other and became friends. He was a quiet kid but talked a lot around me, so I assumed he was just comfortable with me. I made it clear to him that we were just friends and he agreed, so I brought him around my friends and we all started to hang out. Fast forward to spring break, I told Joe that I was going out of town with my family. He seemed disappointed we couldn't spend spring break together but understood. However, while on spring break I ran into Joe at a restaurant. I didn't tell him where I was going, so I thought to myself, wow, what a coincidence. He said he was visiting family in the same town and I believed him. Then in senior year, Joe and I were hanging out at least 3 times a week. I noticed it was too much and I wanted to make time for my other friends as well. That's when things started to change. I ran into Joe, or should I say saw him in the corner of my eye when I spent time with someone else over myself. He started to become obsessive and clingy. The first few times I didn't think much of it. However, it all became clear when I questioned him and he said that he accidentally followed me.
Burdens on the way, burdens left to repay. No, we can do all of them at once. You're so good to me, let me be good to you. Step by step we build ourselves strong. All that you say you really keeping up, that's calm. We're never there passing with you. There can be a bit timing after all the shit that we have been through. I was a mess at times, then took all parts and made them collide until the right ones fell into line to get something I'm